coming back to the point here about security, so it is Israel's policies itself that has Israel itself through its policies has essentially empowered the more radical extremists among the Palestinians, such as within Hamas, while undermining deliberately, more moderate elements who have been willing and expressed willingness to accept the two-state solution for decades. Again, going back to the mid 1970s. And so this is the consequence of Israel's own policies and Israel's refusal to reason, because the essential premise of modern political Zionism is that they want all of the land of Palestine, but without the Palestinians. And that's why Israel was created, through ethnic cleansing. It's why Israel occupied the West Bank and Gaza in the 1967 war, an occupation which persists to this day. It's no longer really tenable to perceive it as a temporary occupation. Israel has essentially, it is a permanent regime of systematic discrimination and oppression and systematic violation of the Palestinians' fundamental human rights, which is the definition of apartheid under international law. So it is really unquestionably an apartheid regime, and numerous, UN agencies and numerous international human rights organizations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Israeli human rights organizations like Yesh Din, B'Tselem, and Gisha have all, publicly concluded that it is an apartheid regime. And so, it's just not possible for Israel to have security when its policies escalate the threat of terrorism, and knowingly so. I mean, you have, in 2003, there was a number of high-level officials, like from Shin Bet, which is Israel's domestic security agency, kind of like our FBI, and from the military establishment, criticizing the policies of Ariel Sharon for escalating the threat of terrorism. Saying things like, we have to recognize that there's another side, and that we are behaving disgracefully with our oppression of the Palestinians. Saying things to this effect, and recognizing how the policies were empowering Hamas, not weakening Hamas, empowering Hamas at the cost of the moderate leadership among the Palestinians. And this was deliberate. And again, this predates Netanyahu, but Netanyahu was quite open and explicit about utilizing Hamas as a strategic ally to block any movement towards peace negotiations. The basic idea being that as long as we have the Palestinian leadership divided between Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank and Hamas in the Gaza Strip, there can't be any peace negotiations.
I think that seems to be such a smoking gun. How do we know that that's true? Where can we verify that Netanyahu specifically and Israel for a while has been propping up Hamas and using them as a way to stymie the peace agreements?
Yeah, somebody actually asked that question in the Q&A after the debate, and I couldn't find the quote immediately at the time. But I pointed out that it's widely quoted. A statement that Netanyahu made has been widely quoted in the Israeli media, and it's never been disputed or denied. I mean, Netanyahu has never denied it, and nobody close to him has ever denied it. So he made a statement during a meeting of Likud members of the Knesset, and I can now pull it up. Let me see here. So the quote is this: anyone who wants to thwart the establishment of a Palestinian state has to support bolstering Hamas and transferring money to Hamas. This is part of our strategy to isolate the Palestinians in Gaza from the Palestinians in the West Bank. And there are all kinds of quotes from high-level Israeli officials, journalists in the Israeli media. It's just an openly acknowledged fact that this was his policy. I can quote from here's Ehud Barak.
Let me say this though, and I want you. Well, say that quote. Then I have
So he said in August 2019, referring to Netanyahu, he says, quote, his strategy is to keep Hamas alive and kicking, even at the price of abandoning the citizens, referring to, the Israeli citizens near Gaza, in order to weaken the PA in Ramallah. There's just quote after quote. Again, he said more recently, Barak again in 2023, in November, said that Netanyahu had shaped a strategy of whoever wants to make sure that we can block any possibility of a two-state solution, I'm quoting, has to support my position of keeping the Hamas strengthened and kicking and alive. So it's just kind of an openly acknowledged fact that this was his policy. And after 10/7, Netanyahu, his popularity plummeted, and because just very wide criticisms in the Israeli media of this policy, people literally blame him for the attacks being a consequence of his policy of utilizing Hamas as a strategic ally. So there really isn't any question about it or any doubt about it whatsoever. It's openly acknowledged in Israel itself that this was his policy. And I've never, ever seen that disputed in the Israeli media.
Okay. Now, the, given that as a fact now, what would you, for example, the United States makes deals with the devil all the time, for its own interest, whether, security or empire, as we might say. So this is not an unusual thing for a state to make deals or to support groups that would be in their benefit. How is this maybe different?
Well, it is quite similar to a lot of U.S. policies. I mean, look back at the Soviet-Afghan War when the CIA was supporting the Mujahideen, recruiting radical extremists to fight alongside Al Qaeda. Got its start. Osama bin Laden's organization got its start during that era, working alongside the CIA out of Peshawar, Pakistan, to fight the Soviets in the U.S.'s proxy war against the Soviet Union. You have the Taliban arose out of the madrasas, the religious schools that the CIA was recruiting extremists from, encouraging the extremists, arming them, training them, right alongside Osama bin Laden. So the U.S. allying itself essentially with Al Qaeda and other terrorist organizations, with ISIS in Syria, in supporting the extremists against the government of Bashar al-Assad in Syria,